All right. Hey, we're taking a look at Blue Bossa, classic jazz standard. A nice, simple 16 measure form. But what I'd like to do now is take a closer look at the melody, and do a bit of an analysis of the melody, which you should start to do with all of the standards, any of the standards that you're playing. So in the case of Blue Bossa, for the first 8 measures, the melody is diatonic. Diatonic is a really important word. Diatonic means according to the scale. And so as far as the scale is concerned here, all the chords in the first 8 measures are derived from the C natural minor scale, also known as the Aeolian mode. All right, same thing, same notes. Aeolian mode, same thing. We could, they're just synonymous. Okay, now if we take a look at the melody, it's a sequential melody. That means that you have this sequence that's played, and then that same sequence is repeated again in a slightly different register. So let's hear the first bit of the sequence. Okay, and all of those notes are diatonic. The scale being. Okay. And then the next phrase in the next 4 measures. So that's clearly a variation of that first phrase, right? It just happens to start on a lower part of the scale, right? It starts on the F instead of the G. So here we have again from the beginning, starting on G. And now from the F, we descend. And now we're at the modulation, and now we're going to move down from the note of E flat. So as you can hear, it's the same sequence over and over again, and then so we're starting at G, sequence moving down from G, right, and then sequence from F moving down from F, and then sequence from E flat moving down from E flat. Right? That's really cool. I just noticed it's just they're just G and F and E flat. So we're just moving down the scale. But at the third point, at measure 9, at the modulation, that E flat moves to a D flat because we're in the key of D flat there, right? We're actually in 5 flats there. And then a little sort of a tag. So it's such a simple, lovely little melody, right? So it's a very sequential melody. Now, let's just talk briefly about recognizing the melody where the strong beats of the melody, where they take place in the measures, and how they reflect harmonically the chord. So we begin with the G, which is the fifth of the C minor chord, right? The fifth of the C minor chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? It jumps up an octave. So starting on the fifth of the chord, dropping down in the scale, as we know, and then ending up on the second measure on the C. So it goes down from the G and then down to the root, right? And then the B flat from the C then to the B. We go down to the A flat, which is the third of the F minor chord. Now, what I'm trying to point out here, you see what this is teaching, and there's no better way to learn this than in tunes, because tunes are great. I mean, standards are called standards because they work. They just make perfect sense, melodically speaking. The melodies stick in your head, and they're fun to play, and so on. And as we can see here, we have the fifth of the chord. We have then descending to the root of the chord. Then an upper neighbor tone falling to the third of the F minor chord. So, no coincidences here. And then an upper neighbor following to the root of the chord, right, of the F minor 7. So the third of the F minor 7, the root of the F minor 7. And then the root of the F minor 7, we start on the D minor 7 flat 5, and it's now the third of the D minor 7 flat 5, D, F, A flat, and C, right? So it's the third, and it drops down to the third of the G7. So a lot of thirds going on here, right? There's a third of the chord, there's a third of the chord, there's a third of the chord. Let's talk about why the thirds of the chord are important. The thirds of the chord are important because they're going to define whether the chord is major or minor. So if it's a minor third, it's going to be a minor chord. If it's a major third, it's going to be a major type chord, right? And that will always hold true. So the third is a very strong defining note, probably the most strong defining note, even more so than the root, because the root will not define whether the chord is major or minor. It'll just define where the fundamental of that chord is, right? And then moving along to the C minor chord, we have again this drops to the fifth of the chord, and then an upper neighbor. An upper neighbor means a note that falls to a chord tone. So this falls to the chord tone of E flat, which is the third again of the C minor. So that's pretty hard to say that this is coincidental, because we just went we just analyzed four chords each, with the third falling on a strong beat. So pretty important stuff. And then when we go to the modulation at measure 9, we have this same interpolation thing here, where we go from an E flat, which is in the third of the C minor, but now we go to the same note of E flat, which becomes the root of the new chord of the moment, right? And then another root. So really strongly defining this, bam, we're in a new key. Let's pin it down and make it clear as a bell as quickly as possible. These are all things that you should be doing in your improvisation. It's like a lesson. Kenny Dorham wrote you a lesson in how to improvise with this tune. And then we have the G flat, which would be the seventh of the A flat 7 chord, and then that G flat sort of hangs out and becomes then it falls to an F which would be the third. So it's used like, again, an upper neighbor, and falls down to that F, and then we flip back up to the A flat, which is also in the key of D, in the D flat major chord, right? So yeah, again, falling to that F, this seven hangs around, and it just is a tension over this D flat chord, falls down to the three again of that D flat chord, and then up to the fifth of the D flat chord. We have a sixth here as well, but that's it. Just it, a quick color, and it works. It works great. The important note the important notes are the three and the five, and then that five lasts over here, and then we have the A. This would be the A flat, right? Because of the key signature. So this is the A flat of the D minor 7 flat 5 chord, right? Pretty important note. So it falls onto that A flat, saying, hey, this is a flat 5 chord. And then the A falling down to the root of the G, and then from the G it flips up to the third of the G, the major third, because it's a G7 chord, and then we finally melodically end up on the fifth of the chord that we started with, and then that fifth starts back in, bracketed, so that it's the beginning of the line again at the top. So I may have missed one or two notes there, but I didn't think that they were hugely consequential. What I'm trying to point out is that when you improvise, there are notes that are more important than others. And very clearly, what's demonstrated in this tune is the chord tones are king. The chord tones are the most important thing, important place to land on those strong beats of the measure. And the most important chord tones are going to be the three of the chord, which defines whether the chord is major or minor. And in this tune, the fifth pops up a little bit as well, but it's not as important as that three. And the seventh pops up too, which is a very important note in terms of defining, for instance, an A flat 7 chord. If you're playing the seventh of the chord, it's going to tell you a lot about the chord. A flat 7 chord, and then here's my 7 flat 7. Right. It's sort of flat 7 being identified in both of those octaves. Okay, so not all notes are of equal importance. In other words, if you really want to define the chord of the moment, use the notes that are in the chord. Colors are great, right? Like ninths and thirteenths and so on. But you don't want to confuse the melody. You don't want to confuse where you're going by constantly using altered tones and color tones, flat fives, flat nines, 13s, and on, to the point where you're clouding what the melody is about. The melody is always underlying everything that you do, and should always be informing all of your improvisations. And a really great way to inform your improvisations is to make yourself aware of how the melody is reflected in the chords and vice versa. Okay, so cool. That was a melodic look at a classic jazz standard, a bossa nova jazz standard, and as we can see, we're in the key of C minor and the key of D flat. I hope that this analysis was a help to you, and if so, subscribe, like. If you have any questions, please fire away. We love questions, and especially ones that have to do with music. The other ones I usually can't answer. Okay, so that was cool. That was fun. And I hope you learned something. And we'll see you again real soon.